Okay. This is a weird sort of rant, inspired, or discussion, or whatever you want to call it. Inspired by playing Crusoe's Planet, and then playing it again with my wife, and also some discussions I had with Hello Gregor about the issue online. Very briefly, it's on the YouTube page, or pages involving Crusoe's Planet. One of the first things that it sparked me to thinking about was life as a game. If life was a game, it's kind of an interesting model to look at because you don't know what the victory conditions are, right? There's certain minimal, geez, I clearly lose if something terrible happens to me. But it also focuses along the lines of what can this tell you about various people? And then the two fused together in a discussion I had with my wife after playing. So I played with her, and I went and grabbed spears first thing, and then kind of used those spears to demand what I saw as an equitable distribution of the situation to keep me alive, but also a fair trade, where she could have maybe extorted me, but essentially I turned the tables by having weaponry. And then we played through, and I think overall, I kept trying to be the militarist and make sure that I was not getting an unfair shake, and tried to give her a fair shake with this sort of paternalistic, threats, but not trying to be unfair and using that threat. And we got towards the end of the game, in fact, the last turn, and there weren't a lot of radios out there, particularly top 40. And I ended up, well, doing what of course one does in that game. I didn't think the chances of rescue were very good. In fact, they were less than 50% with two of us. So I killed her. And indeed I got rescued, but we rolled the die. It would have been automatic actually, but given the pick that came up for the type of radio. But we ended up then rolling it out, and we would have both survived, and I would have won anyway in the victory point calculation, just because, because I used my dominance to good effect. And her immediate statement was, it does really show a lot about people. And I think it does. And one of my thoughts on that was, it shows something I've always kind of stated in my life, which was, if I ever had sort of clear victory conditions to life, I think I'd be very dangerous. So if I became convinced that I was right about something, that, for example, the goal of this life is for me is to convince everyone to be a follower of my religion, or whatever, I could become a dangerous, almost Hitler-like figure, at least in intention, as opposed to someone who's unmotivated and unable to, discover much of anything. In fact, one of my early sort of philosophical stances was, okay, I'm always looking, because I'm looking for this goal, I'm always looking at the question of what is right and what is wrong, what is good, what is evil. How do you tell these things apart? Obviously, lots of people have invested much more serious thinking to this than I have, although I've probably whirred around in my brain as much as anyone with it, but I'm not a very serious person. So, when someone tries to make a statement like, oh, but killing people is wrong, death, especially early death or whatever, is unnecessary. Life should be a goal. Maybe happiness is a goal, things like that. I can usually find examples that tear apart whatever this easy statement is. And easy statements like Millsian utility, which very quickly have some interesting aspects to them. Now, one can come up with, I think, a fairly nuanced version of a utilitarian argument that may not be so easy to destroy. But there's something somewhat unpleasant about a goal state that involves, in the simplest term, multiplying the number of people essentially by the amount of happiness they have. Well, that may be the case, but the average happiness would be greater if there were less people. So, under a Millsian type state, when I start looking at what my values might be, I feel like my desire would be to eliminate large quantities of people. Not everyone, but everyone I don't care about. Simply because some slice should get that advantage. And, well, being in the observer's position. Likewise, if you start looking at misery, the reduction of misery, the best way to reduce misery is to kill everyone, because then they will suffer no misery. Is that the best way to promote happiness? Well, promoting happiness is a more difficult thing. A government trying to foist happiness onto people is impossible. They can't make these individual judgments, whereas if you give people the freedom to produce those individual judgments, they're going to reduce the happiness of other people in unbalanced and unfair ways. So that doesn't seem very good. One of the simplest arguments that I used along this was, well, look, if death is a bad thing, if we want to reduce the total amount of deaths, and this is the same as reducing the total amount of misery, right? The answer is to kill everyone now. Because we'll make more and there will be more death. Same thing with suffering. There will be more people, there will be greater suffering. And none of that really makes sense though, right? I mean, in the sense of, well, look, if there is no goal, who the hell gives a shit? Just do whatever and it's all the same, right? I mean, I don't care if you're a mass murderer or if you sit at home and enjoy fantasies or whatever. It's all the same in the end. And that's kind of where I kind of sit is, well, if it's all the same, why the fuck should I bother? I'll try to reduce my misery and not worry too much about others. That kind of strong sense of, you could call it a selfishness. That's what my wife likes to call it. I believe everybody's fundamentally selfish in every decision they do, and I'll cover that in another video. And it's fairly simple and common view, especially among narcissists. But and I believe irrefutable. But the problem is that there are some goals that are generally good for society. For example, the idea that, things can go badly, and there should be some sort of safety net. Now, the more complex you make that safety net, the easier it is to game it. But honestly, I'm not too worried if there are some people who are kind of living along in a bare bones type of survival off of the fruit of others for the most part. There's a lot of excess in our society, and we can easily afford that. On the other hand, if I happen to fall, and I have in times in my life, through the cracks of the society, in fact, much of my life, it really sucks to be in that situation where you lose whatever you have, where maybe you have to even lose your morality and start committing crimes to exist in some bare, minimal type of circumstance. And then you're risking the possibility of being put in some other kind of really unpleasant circumstance where, your ass is up for sale in jail or whatever. So, the strong negative, the damnation which is possible, and which some will say, well, they deserved it for, maybe their bad fortune or maybe some bad decisions or whatever. That seems a little harsh to me. However, being a tremendously selfish person, I don't see, and selfish but not empathetic, which is, and this is another video that I wish to do at some point, but when I walked through Grand Central Station the first time, I saw all the beggars, and it brought just such pain to me to think so many people in such bad straits. I want to help them all, but I can look and I can see I cannot, right? I cannot help them all. I could maybe help one, but that wouldn't be sufficient, right? That doesn't lessen the overall misery enough. On the other hand, a collective to do so does. A collective agreement. And in something like Crusoe's planet, you have this need. You have a collective need to get the radio produced. By putting that forward, by saying that there's this collective need, or this collective desire to provide a safety net to people, or whatever, you don't necessarily prevent them from doing something of value. In fact, in Crusoe's planet, it's impossible not to do something of value. However, it is possible that somebody will try to stockpile leisure and take goods that don't do them any good for that. And that's definitely very similar to the welfare state idea, the attack on the welfare state, which is, well, you know, if you don't want to make money and we're providing you with enough to survive, and then you can go do something that matters to you, like create art or just think or hang out at the park and enjoy the birds or whatever it is that you enjoy, or watch TV or whatever, well, you're not adding to society in any way. Maybe you are with the art, but with these other things, all you're doing is leeching. You're not adding anything. Now, I would argue that there is actually a value to that kind of broad base of different experiences to producing something that isn't really clearly produced. It's not a manufactured product. It's not something you can sell. It's not something that has a market value. And actually, by getting rid of the opportunity to just be in that leisure stance, you're cutting away something that could provide some value, but maybe not as much value, just as with art, as having people producing widgets all day long. Even if we don't need widgets, it might be worthwhile to have people doing that. You know, that's kind of the, well, if you don't do honest work, you're actually becoming a corruption on society type of feel. Well, I actually think that corruption on society may be a good thing. It allows people the chance to think of things that are outside of that purely materialistic view in an easier sort of way. Anyway, the interesting thing that comes, though, is if I was on a planet with someone in the Crusoe's planet type of version, there's no way I would kill them in order to improve my chance of being rescued. But what I don't understand in the game is the victory conditions. They're very specific and exact, and I can see what they are, but life is not that way to me. Now, the dangerous thing, certainly if I were to become clear on what the victory conditions are of life, because, you know, obviously then I would go for them, right? Is people who do see right and wrong clearly. People who see what is good and bad. Cortez landing and destroying the entire Aztec civilization because human sacrifice is wrong. That scares me. Hitler seeing that the Jews are corrupting Germany and the Nordic races, and that is wrong and must be stopped. These things, when someone can clearly see what is right and wrong, when they're no longer in this gray area of unknown, when they know what is right from what is wrong, that's when they create ill. Christians, kill them all, let God sort them out. They know that's right in the Crusades. your fundamentalist terrorist now, yeah, goes for any kind of person who has decided they know what is right. The White Plague by Frank Herbert. The main character knew that his vengeance was right. If you're ever in that position, you are a threat. And I know that's right, and we'll hunt everyone down. No. But on the other hand, you can have great advances by people who know what is right, what they're following is correct. You can have some very interesting thought created out of that. So of course the question then becomes, how much is that danger, does that danger have, is that risk worth committing? Because is there something that comes up that is good of that? I don't know. I'm in that gray area. I feel safe there. If I ever know, I will feel burdened to exact the set of actions that burden requires. And I'm not sure if my inherent laziness would counteract that in any particular way, but it is scary when you look at people who seem to act like they know what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what kind of things those people would be capable of for that pure right and pure wrong. And that's really the one thing that I took walking away from Crusoe's planet, is if there weren't victory conditions in it. If one person didn't win by having a good life on the planet and squirreling away a lot of diamonds and affecting their rescue. In fact, if one person didn't improve his chances of victory by killing everyone off. And I think no matter, I think if you play a game of Crusoe's Planet with me, you want to make sure I die or am enslaved or something in a position where I cannot do violence. And I cannot incite violence, right? I mean, you want me dead. Because I am just a risk to that situation, because I know what the victory conditions are, and I know how to best improve them. And unless you exact some sort of oath from me, because for some reason my oaths mean more than victory in any condition, I wonder why. It's almost like I have this meta-victory condition above any and all games, where if I, agree to something, I stick to it. Unless you do that, there's no chance that I will not try to arrange to improve my chances of victory by killing everyone off. But everyone dead doesn't help me in the world model, right? I mean, maybe it does. I like the idea of everyone dead. I want to be amongst them in that case. But that's sort of I've come to certain conclusions that life is evil in general. Not just intelligent life, certainly not just human life. All life is somewhat evil. It is almost a matter of faith to me in that sort of sense. Anyway, and if I ever really believed it, I would, hunt down ways to try to eliminate life in every way I can. But I don't. I just don't hold any of my matters of faith, not even my honesty and my oaths, to that degree. That's too much effort. And I will break an oath if it's too much effort to keep it sometimes. And I think that kind of flexibility is actually what's necessary. I think that's what's necessary to be not a supreme danger to the society that you're in. I think anyone who sees things in black and white is, especially since I'm capable of seeing things in very black and white, is a supreme danger. And anyone who puts the statement that way is scary in that they might represent such a danger. It seems almost a psychopathical position to be in, to believe what is wrong and what is right. All right, up it goes.